So I'm excited that everyone is here today, and this has been a great leadership conference so far this year. And we got a lot more coming, but before, I want to introduce to you David Johnson. David Johnson is someone that several of us in the faculty and the leadership and professional development curriculum have worked with. I particularly met him in the fall of 2022 when he was at our networking event and entered into a bit of a conversation with people about how do you keep up with your connections and how do you build relationships to foster the growth of your business. So with that, I want to introduce to you someone who's got tons of wisdom to share with you today to make sure that you have a successful future in business. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to David.
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. Yeah, save the applause to the end. Again, my name is David Johnson. I was raised by a 5th grade educated sharecropper son who was probably the smartest person I ever knew. My father had no education, but he had a PhD in common sense. And some of the things that he taught me were very simple, very fundamental, but they reaped huge benefits in life as far as success. And this will be some about just life investing, how to acquire wealth. Everybody here has made a decision to invest in their future by coming to school and getting a degree in higher education. What you want to do with that education is get a return on investment, I'm assuming. Is that correct? I mean, it's not all about money, but money does affect and allow you to make choices and lifestyle and how you benefit people in the world. So, success sometimes presents itself dressed in work clothes. So you have to get to work and roll up your sleeves and decide what you're going to do with your life and how you're going to be successful. So, with that said, we'll look at, let's see if this will work. It is. Dad's financial advice. So what have I done? I ran a glass business for 30 years. We had approximately 35 employees. We covered Eastern North Carolina. I bought the business when I was 26 years old and had no idea what I was doing and how to do it. But you learn it just through sheer fear and worrying about failing. You continually find best practices and you basically find a way. So I sold my business in 2015, and since then I've hiked the Appalachian Trail, through hiked, and that was a 6-month journey. My wife gave me permission to get away. She said, you got one chance, so if you decide you want to get off, you're not going back. So I was able to finish it in 2016. And what I've been doing with my life ever since is I managed some real estate that we acquired during our business. And a lifelong dream was I always loved baseball. My team was the St. Louis Cardinals. And after COVID, that disruption in the workplace allowed some openings to work on the grounds crew. So I've been going to St. Louis during the summer and working, raking, preparing bullpens and just basically being around a sport that I love. So that's some of the freedom that I've got after 30 years of being, I won't say chained to a business, but the business when you're working, it can tend to own you versus you owning it. So let's get started. Let's jump right in. The $1 Million Letter. I wrote my children a letter about 15 years ago, and I said, there were 30 principles on it, and I said, if you follow the advice, these things that I've accumulated in life, how you can retire with over $1 million. And I don't know what other advice you've got. You could probably talk to financial planners and people with a lot more education than myself, but it's not that hard, and these principles are relatively simple. It's just how do you apply it? Are you willing to take the first steps and create action. Everything in your life is a choice. Inaction is a choice. But to act and create a sense of urgency, that is what gets the ball rolling. And at your age, as we'll go over, you really want to get the ball rolling as quickly as possible. And I'll put this up at the end. You can request a copy of the complete letter by emailing me at dpjglass@icloud.com. All right, let's look at the $1 million letter. We're going to talk about setting goals and making plans, paying yourself first. Time is your best asset. Live beneath your means. Learn to delay gratification. Everything in life is negotiated. As you can probably relate about negotiation because you negotiate with your parents on everything. As a parent of 4 children, I know that kids can sometimes be the best negotiators in the world. They're very persistent, and it's hard for them to sometimes understand the word no. And then constantly learn about money. Constantly educate yourself. Don't stop. It's a process. Does anybody ever watch CNBC? Have you ever got up in the morning and turned on CNBC or Fox Business? You see the ticker going across the bottom and you see the symbols. Does anybody even know what I'm talking about? Any hands? Okay. Do you understand the symbols? Do you understand what's going on? Well, it took me years to figure that out and to understand what things were and why they were showing certain symbols. It's just a process. So you're at the beginning of this process, and what you take with it and how far you go with it is totally up to you. So some of you guys are and gals are juniors, seniors. Are you in grad school? What is the ages, average age here? 25, 24, 23?
How many sophomores?
Sophomores?
About juniors and seniors. There you go.
Okay.
All right.
All right, so early 20s. When my kids graduated, and I had 2 that graduated from ECU, one from the business school, and is doing very well, so that's a good omen for you guys. I made them write down goals. I made them write down their 1-year, 5-year, 10-year, and then life goals. And before I gave them their graduation present, because this was in June of their graduating year, and they had that time before they had started work, and so more reflect and plan. And goals to some extent can be dreams and wishes, but dreams and wishes are just not concrete. They're just so abstract because there's no plan attached to them. So I wanted them to dream, and I wanted them to write things down, and when they turned it in to me the first time, expecting to get their graduation present, I said, not good enough, I want to see more. They redid it, they sent it back to me, I said, it's not good enough, I want to see more. The third time, third time with one, the fourth time with the other child, they said, Dad, this is all I can think of, this is all I can imagine accomplishing in my life. I said, okay, now I'll read it. Because I wasn't going to let them skate by just giving me some dribble. And it was a nice graduation gift, so they had to put some work in. But that's their roadmap, that's their life plan that they get to use to follow and track their progression. So everybody, are you familiar with the SMART goal format? Great, because that's anything else. People say, oh, I wrote down a goal, and they just write down a sentence, and it doesn't. It's like buying a lottery ticket. It's hope and wish. But with the SMART goal format, obviously it's got to be specific. It's got to be measurable. How do you know that you achieved that goal? It's got to be achievable, so it can't be something just way out there. And relevant is the why. Why do you want to achieve this or accomplish that? And then, of course, you have to put a time limit on it. My wife and I guess about 10, 11 years in our marriage, we took a weekend and went to just a hotel in Raleigh and took the laptop and just sat down and wrote out what our life goals were and our goals for our children. And we probably wrote 8 or 9 pages of it. And on the list there were varying goals, from financial goals to, let's see if I got something here, family goals, physical goals, professional and career goals, community goals, and goals of to do or to have. You know, obviously, you know, do you want that boat? Do you want that mountain house? Do you want to travel? What are your goals? But we've probably accomplished close to 70% of the goals that we had written, and of the 30%, I would say half of them aren't even relevant anymore, but what did we know at that point in time? We were in our early 30s. So goals aren't just financial, so you really need to think about and plan out your life, because this is your life map. If you don't write out goals, if you don't take this time now in your early 20s to think of, and it's hard, I'm going to tell you, I hope 10% of you will take this advice and write out some goals, even if you only write out 5 or 10 goals and save them and look at them in 10 years. People won't do it. It's hard. You really have to think about yourself, and you got to extend yourself a little bit, because what if I don't achieve the goal? Well, so what? Why take if you get 80% of what your goal is, that's better than nothing, or taking whatever is left. So you have to force yourself. I mean, it's really a hard, when my wife and I were in the hotel room, we literally turned off the TV and we just sat there. We ordered dinner in room service, and we stayed there 2 nights until we had what we thought was a reasonable list of goals. And it's just a matter of going through the process. Once you start, it gets easier. The other thing you have to do is you've got to read your goals. You've got to look at them. And you'll find almost immediately some of them become irrelevant. But by looking at them, it programs your mind. And there's something, when you're taking action on your goals, there's something, without sounding too spacey, there's something universal in the world that gets behind you. When you take action on something, Providence gets behind you, and it's amazing how sources of help work their way towards you, and you'll find little doors opening just because you've opened your mind towards the possibility of something. So dream big, put down some big goals, even if they're what you think now are borderline attainable, because in 30 years you'll think, I should have doubled that, or I should have extended it further. I put on my mirror in the house that we lived in for 8 years, I will have X amount of money by this time, and I will have an annual income of, and I just had it up on, it was written in pencil because it had faded by the time we moved 8 years later. And it wasn't it was not a bathroom that guests used, so it was just really for me to look at when I'm brushing my teeth or shaving in the morning. When we moved, I took my card off. It was just an index card, and somebody had written on the back, "No way," which was almost like a personal challenge to me. And I can tell you, I didn't accomplish it by the exact time that I put on it, but it was within 15% of the number of years. It was another year and a half before I was able to attain that level of income. That was just for me. And there are going to be people that doubt your goals, so be careful who you share them with. That's why it's got to be personal, and it's got to be yours. But I put this first because if you don't have this, nothing else really matters. You're just going to take what you get. You're going to take what's left over. But when you write it out, you're going to get what you want. You're going to get what you decide. And there becomes a lot of responsibility with that, because you have to choose wisely, because you can't have everything, and you're going to have to focus in on what is really important to you and where your values are. So you got your goals written, you got a job, you're making money. How many times I would hear people say, I can't save money, I don't have anything left, I'm paying my bills, I just can't get by. Well, you have to pay yourself first. You have to get committed to paying yourself first. Whatever it is that you can save, you got to decide how much that is, and that's got to become your number one bill. When you pay yourself first, and I'll use in the next slide $300, whatever's left is what you'll live on. People make budgeting sometimes a little bit too complicated, and budgets are great, but so many times they worry about so you got to have your rent and utilities, but they worry about the other things. But if you've taken the money out, you're going to live on whatever's left. You're going to make the rest of your choices on whatever money is left. My wife and I did envelope budgeting. Is anybody familiar with envelope budgeting? Good. We would put in an envelope cash at the beginning of each month what we were going to spend it on. And we had done this for about 2 years, and my wife came home with this really nice jacket. And I'm like, where did you get the money for the jacket? She said, with the grocery money. I said, what do you mean with the grocery money? She said, oh, there was always $10 or $15 left at the end of the month, and I would just save it. I said, I knew we were eating a lot of bologna because she was saving money on groceries so she could have something extra. But it didn't matter because all of our other bills were covered through those envelopes. And then it's just a small blurb at the end, but it says as soon as you have a job, open a Roth IRA. Everybody write that down. A Roth IRA is the only loophole the government gives us. And the reason they allow you to put in up to $6,500 a year and never pay, you'll pay taxes on it now, but you're at the lowest tax rate you'll ever be because you'll continue to earn more money and your tax rate will be higher. In some cases, you won't pay any taxes on it, but it's the growth of that money, whatever it earns and that money, when you take it out, it won't be taxed. And taxes are, being a small business person, taxes are really a sore spot with me. So, any way you can, I want to say, beat the government in taxes. And the reason they allow this is because it's only $6,500 a year. And very few people take advantage of it. But I can tell you, with my children in small business, the catch is it's got to be earned income. So you can't do it with children unless they're actually working in some way. And I worked my kids through my business. They washed trucks, they emptied the trash, they cleaned the windows, they would ride with me and make deliveries. And so I paid my children a little bit of money from the age of 7, 8 years old on up through college and put it in a Roth IRA. And they're in their 30s now, and I can tell you it's hundreds of thousands of dollars because of the time and the growth. Even if it's only a small amount that you put in, it will accumulate. So Roth IRA. When you make your budget, just right at the top, what are you going to decide to save? Everything else is what's left. You'll figure that part out. But make the conscious decision to save something. Even if it's $50, nothing is too small. And this is money you're never going to see again for 40 years. You just got to commit to that. It's not your emergency fund. It's not a vacation fund. It's gone. As far as you're concerned, once you put it away, it's gone. It's the 65-year-old version of yourself. Time is your best asset. As the Rolling Stones would say, time, it's on your side. Start now with whatever you can afford. You'll never have any more time than you do right now. Compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. And if you save $5 a day for 41 years and invest it at a 10% return and get the 10% return annually, you'll have over $1 million. And that's a coffee a day, right? And it's just changing how you are going to value that money. I don't know if you've seen this illustration before, but the story was told to me that there were two brothers. One brother, person one, started saving $300 per month. He got 10% compounded interest for 10 years. After 10 years, him and his wife had a family. He couldn't afford to contribute anymore, so he quit contributing to his fund. But he still had it invested, and it still continued to earn 10% a year. At the age of 70, that would accumulate to over $2.5 million. The other brother, he wanted to have fun for 10 years, so he took trips, he bought expensive cars, he did whatever he wanted, and then he got married, and at age 32, he started saving $300 a month and continued to save $300 a month for 38 years. At the age of 70, and he had $1.5 million. One saved for 10 years, one saved for 38 years. That's why I can't impress enough on you. The earlier you start, the more you will make. I used to play around with, my age is I started in business before there were even computers. But by my early 30s, Quicken had a program where you could plug in your initial deposit, your monthly contributions, what interest rate you would earn, and for how long. And I used to just play around with and look at the tables to see. And the bottom line is, you make the money the last few years, 10%. If there was $2,600,000 in that account, 10% of that is $260,000. So the last year, at age 69, person number one made some under $250,000 just in interest, compared to the other person who was putting in $3,600 a year. So you see how that can continue to skew, and it's a snowball, and it begins to roll. But you got to start now. Don't wait on it. It's not complicated. I don't care. I know there are other speakers here that are wealth management firms or brokerage firms, but it's as simple as TD Ameritrade or Charles Schwab. I do all of my investing on Charles Schwab on my phone. I can do everything I want. I write calls and puts, buy and sell. I manage my mom's account, everything from my phone. So it's really easy to open these accounts, but you got to get started. Whoop. Okay, here we go. Begin savings today. Open this Schwab or TD Ameritrade account. Something that's got, my son asked me about what's the Robinhood account. Stay away from that stuff. You just want something that is, and this is just a side note, you don't have to be an experienced investor. You don't have to catch the next Tesla or NVIDIA. Has anybody seen NVIDIA lately? That stock is just, over the last 6 months, has gone up almost 100%. But you don't have to catch those. If you invest in EFTs, a VOO is a Vanguard EFT, which is just the S&P 500. You're going to place your bet on the U.S. economy. And I can tell you this from investing and using all types of investment brokerage firms. I've got one investment brokerage firm owner who went to jail for 10 years for fraud. I had another guy I used, and I would actually visit the guy in jail. So he was a good guy who did some bad things. He didn't cost me any money, but I have another one that went bankrupt. And when I figured out that no matter how smart they were about money, I cared about my money a whole lot more than they did. So take that responsibility for your investments and just bet on the U.S. economy. You'll be fine. Now we're going to talk to part that is a little bit harder to digest, is living beneath your means. Because you guys are all in the social media generation. So you see what other people are buying and other people are having. But it wasn't so different even in my age. I saw people who were driving convertibles, colleagues, friends, taking nice vacations. And I always wondered, to ask my wife, how can they afford it? They couldn't afford it. They were borrowing the money to take those vacations. And you know, here I was thinking, feeling sorry for myself, but in the end, we still took vacations. We just worked it within our budget. So self-discipline is critical with investing. You've just got to commit to it. And now you can do it so easy because you can make automatic investment options where it will monthly come out of one account and go in, and you don't even have to think about it. All you got to do is not get in the way of it. Once you commit, you can always add. The Millionaire Next Door by Danko and Stanley, and I've got a reading list, and again, if you email it, I can send it to you. Changed my life, but what he talks about in this book is attorneys, doctors, accountants are not your high wealth people. Everybody thinks they're high wealth because they drive the nicest cars, they dress the nicest, they show the highest appearance of wealth, but that's not the wealthiest careers. Business, sales, those are some of the areas where the highest net worth interviews that they did. And just an aside note, do you know the number one thing from preventing wealth? The number one thing, adult-dependent children. Seriously, so whatever you do, don't become adult-dependent children on your parents, because those are the years when you accumulate the most amount of money, and if you're not able to put that into savings, again, it has a detrimental effect. Learn to delay gratification. That is, again, if you follow your goals, you're really not delaying gratification because you've already got your goal written out and you know when you will get that particular item that you're looking for. So Dave Ramsey says, if you live like no one else, one day you can live like no one else. But that is Zig Ziglar. If anybody's heard of Zig Ziglar, he'd say, do the things you need to do when you need to do them. Then there'll come a day when you can do the things you want to do when you want to do them. But it never is in the reverse. You got to take care of business. Now we're going to talk about negotiating. Everything in life can be negotiated. And again, I'll leave you with a book, The Secrets of Power Negotiating. There used to be a company called Nightingale Conant that would send out cassette tapes, motivational books or different authors, and it would come in a kind of a binder with 8 cassette tapes. Somebody sent me The Secrets of Power Negotiating. I don't know who, I didn't order it. It came to my office, I opened the box, I looked at it, and it was $59.99. This is probably in 1988 or 89. And I'm like, I'm not paying $60 for these cassette tapes. But then I looked and it said 30-day money-back guarantee. I thought, I can listen to these in 30 days and send it back. The first thing he said in his book was, you want to ask, is that the best you can do? And write that down too, because that will save you thousands of dollars throughout your life. Is that the best you can do? Just by asking that, you'd be surprised how many times people will come back with a different price. I was in the glass business. I had a job that we had bid at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base where I was ordering 150 shower doors. And all I had to do was have them delivered to the Air Force Base. We got the contract in. I'm getting ready to order the shower doors. This is before, obviously, email and online ordering. This was even before fax machines. That's how old I am. So I had to verbally order these shower doors. And I'm reading the quantity, I'm saying the size, I'm getting the vendor to repeat it to me so there are no errors. And then I got ready to confirm the price, and it was like $103. And I said, "You've quoted me a price, but is that the best you can do?" And I hear the adding machine clicking. Comes back and says, "No, we can do those for $93.50. I'm like, I just saved $10 on 100 shower doors, 150 shower doors. I'm gonna keep those tapes, and I'm gonna listen to the rest of them, because it was that easy. I just thought of it at the last second, and people will make an adjustment. You also have to ask for more than you expect to get, because you can't negotiate if you're always negotiating from the point to where you're willing to buy. So you've always got to, or sell, you've always got to ask for more than you expect to get. And then the number one thing I see people break is they can't walk away from a deal. They get so locked in that they're going to make the deal at any cost. If you maintain walkaway power, or if you walk away from a negotiation because it's not going the way you want, or where you feel like you can be successful, again, I've had people come back to me days after I said, "No, we're not going to do it." They'll call me back and say, "Hey, I thought about it, and I'll be willing to do it for that." So I had already, some of the deals I said, "No, I've already moved on," but some of them I would say, "Okay, you got a deal, we can make it work." So you got to know where your position is, and wherever that bottom position is, once it gets past it, you have to walk away, because otherwise it gets used against you. It becomes emotional. So again, people are pretty much all the same. We all react in similar ways. This helps you realize some of the things that you might be doing wrong, and some of the things that other people are doing to you. So everything can be negotiated. By asking, is that the best you can do? I've had friends that one particular friend who was buying a hot tub, and I just was with him just to look at it because we were riding together, and said, "Let's stop in, I ordered this." And I started asking the salesperson, "Is that the best you can do?" And he was elbowing me because he was uncomfortable. He thought I was being cheap. And the salesman took off the delivery charge, which maybe was a couple $100. And we got out to the car. I'm like, "I just saved you $200. He's like, "Yeah, but I can afford that." And I'm like, "But it was $200. So it all adds up, and it's not a matter of being cheap. You've just got to be willing to ask, because the worst thing they can say is, "Yeah, that is absolutely the best I can do." So negotiate everything, and it's got to be a habit. Then we'll talk about learning about money, and these particular books are the ones that I have gotten the most out of, and they have very simple concepts. Nothing is complicated. My 12th grade education, I could comprehend everything and apply everything they put in these books. And some of it applied to me, some of it didn't, but I was able to adapt and make it work for me. One of the questions is, in Getting Rich in America, and it's not all about money. I mean, I don't want to come across and say, money, but you got to make money, you got to invest money, you got to become a millionaire. It's not about money. It's about your life, and money is just one way to enhance your life, but it's also a way to enhance your values. You can give the money away. You can do it and use it for causes better and above yourself, but it gives you flexibility and it gives you security. And that's what I strive for at an early age. Is I wanted financial security. My father, like I said, was an intelligent guy, and the way they define success is success isn't how far you get. Success is how far you get from where you started. And he joined the Army when he was 16 because he said he could continue sharecropping, he could make liquor, he was too afraid to do that, or join the service. And he had to lie to get into the service and tell him he was 17. So success will be your definition. one of the things that I've tried to tell my kids is don't take diet advice from fat people or financial advice from broke people, because you'll have people coming up to you all the time saying, hey, buy this stock, try this, you should do this, do that. Look at the situation that they're in. And I also, with any other financial service provider, if their advice is so great, you know, what kind of house are they living in, and how are they positioned? So take responsibility yourself. And when we talked about continually learning about money and learning about investment, you'll be on par. And again, nobody cares more about your money than you do. I've had them call me up and say, I've got a Series 10 license. I've gone to school for 8 years to learn how to invest. And I would say, you know 1,000 more times about investing than I do, but I care 1,000,000 times more about my money than you do. So take that responsibility. Conclusion, my advice is simple. It's make goals, start now, pay yourself first, live beneath your means, learn. Everybody can do what I have briefly touched on here today. It's a choice of whether you take that step to open that account. The bar has gotten so easy, you can do everything online now. But you can actually go into a brokerage account and fill out an application and make a relationship with somebody. But the choice is yours to either do it or not do it. In this room, there are, let's say, 60, 75 average 22-year-old people here. My bet is that 99% of you will be 65-year-old people in 43 years. What you do now at 22, 21, 23 will determine how life is for that 65-year-old person. So choose wisely, think about it, and everyone can do it. Decide where you're going to be in 30 to 40 years, and for a complete $1 million letter, email me at dpjglass@icloud.com. And do you have any questions? Because I don't want to sound like I'm preaching. These are just things that have worked for me in the real world. Questions?
I've seen a lot of pens pushing on paper, so please do email for this, but you've got to have some questions, because I go to a lot of leadership conferences and I see a lot of things. I've seen a lot of people taking notes. So what questions could you ask Dave that you think this is your one chance to ask somebody who's been wildly successful, because I think you have been incredibly successful, and your children and all your stories. I mean, this is your chance to sort of soak up some of his wisdom. So what questions do you have?
Yes.
What are some of your prep work before you go into the negotiation?
Know who else. I always like to know who else they're talking to. If I'm selling, I want to know who else. Maybe what other vendor they talk to. I want to know how busy that other vendor is, because sometimes it's not about money. It's about lead times, because as we talked about by investing early, time is money. So they will be able to trade off where you can get a little higher price if you're willing, because everything comes into the negotiation. It's just, and by listening to the Secrets of Power Negotiating or reading it, you'll find there are so many other things that you can negotiate. So you got to find out what's important to that person, and then try to accentuate the things that don't matter to you to still get your best price.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, sir.
What are your thoughts on investing in real estate? Do you have a recommendation of a book or something that could inform you on that industry?
I think Getting Rich in America, Brian Tracy talks about investing in real estate, and it's a great question. And real estate is, we have been very fortunate in real estate, because with our business, we would build a location and then rent it back to ourselves, because I always thought the best tenant in the world is me. And then when we sold the business, we continued to rent the property, so I could still achieve income off of properties that we built 25, 30 years ago. I've told all my kids, you know, if you get that first house, get a roommate, so that they're helping you pay the mortgage down. And then if you stay in it 5, 7 years, you can, again, try to build up the equity, but also save money and rent that house, that second house. But the one thing about real estate, and I know everybody here, is your jobs are going to take you all over, and you want the flexibility to move. You really have to be locked into an area before you commit to real estate. Otherwise, you're hiring property managers. I go by all of our real estate every month. And if it's nothing but riding around the parking lot, I'll take pictures if I see crates or boxes that are left out in the parking lot, and I'll email the tenant and say, hey, it looks like you've been busy this week. Is there any way you can get that cleaned up? And just to let them know that I'm putting my eyes on it. So that's the downside to real estate. But later in life, once your career is established, you may know that you're going to be in an area longer, and then it's a good time to look at that. You're welcome. Yes,
What's your opinion on that? And then did you have to use that to buy the business when you first started?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything is a cost benefit, I guess, analysis that you look at. My youngest son is 32 years old, and they're looking at they just moved back to the area. They're looking at buying a house, and he's just miserable that interest rates are 8%. And I was telling Catherine, in 1985, our interest rate was 12% that we bought our first house at. So, yeah, debt has to make sense. So with personal debt, we had to buy a little smaller house than we necessarily wanted, because so much of our payment was going to interest. But with business debt, absolutely, it's an investment. And with business debt, you are able to write off your interest expense. So not all of that debt is coming out of your cash flow. Plus, you're able to, if it's a larger purchase, built real estate, even equipment, you're able to depreciate it. So you're further using taxes to offset your actual cash flow expense. But you have to use debt unless you've got access to friends or relatives, and plus they want a return on their money too. So can you? In 2006, my little brother bought a house in San Francisco, and he was telling me about it was a house in a small farm out in Bodega, a little bit north of San Francisco. And I said, well, what was your term? He said it was $1 million interest only. And I said, well, for how long? I said, when's the payoff? He said, you dumbass, it's interest only. It never gets paid off. I'm just paying the interest. The $1 million is still owed after 10 years. And I said, you're calling me a dumbass? You borrowed $1 million and you're not paying it back? And this was personal consumption loan that I said, I borrowed $1 million, but I'm using that money to make enough other money to pay the debt service. So it's got to be the cost benefit. If the debt will allow you to make more money, absolutely. But there's always that risk, right? And you have to be able to find yourself. That's another thing I can tell you is, don't be risk averse. Nothing is guaranteed. There's no complete safe bet. So analyze the risk, get comfortable with being a little bit uncomfortable, and you look back in 10 or 15 years and it's like, what was I so worried about? I mean, you make adjustments along the way. You can't. We bought a piece of property that I was so worried that if we got into trouble, I was leveraged to a point that it just wasn't. We had 3 small kids, and my backup plan was we would sell the house and move into the commercial property, and I would put a bathroom with a shower and a small kitchen in the back, and we could utilize that until we got on our feet. So, I mean, you always, you know, but you're living with that, and that's the risk, and then you just kind of put it aside and you do the things you need to do, and that takes care of things. I don't want to sound overly simplistic, but it's really starting and moving. You gotta be, there's brilliance and boldness. You have to be bold, you have to move, you have to take a chance. Because the safe bet, everybody wants the safe bet. And that's why the safe bet doesn't always pay as well. So be willing to take a chance, and you'll be glad you did.
So you mentioned being open to risk, and you can be a little more open to risk the younger you are. How do you determine what's an appropriate amount of risk to take for yourself?
My dad told me a story when he was buying a new house. He had 4 children, and we were all pretty small. And the banker asked him, he said, "Are you so leveraged that you can't go out once a week and take, or once a month and take?" We eat out once a week now, but in the 60s, eating out once a month was a luxury. That you can't take your family out for dinner once a month. If you're worried that you won't be able to do that. And so that was his barometer of how much risk was palatable. I think it was, everybody knows J.C. Penney. I think they're still in business somewhere. But there used to be a guy by the name of J.C. Penney. And I read somewhere where he said what he did was, when he did a new business venture, he figured out what was the worst thing that could happen. And then he worked like hell to make sure that didn't happen. And that's pretty much what you do. Once you know what the downside is, then you just got to focus in on making sure that can't happen. And to say I used my gut a lot, I mean, you know. I mean, you really know. You can feel your uncomfortability with something. I've never been into an attorney's office where I wasn't signing the paper and I didn't have a little bit of knots in my stomach looking at the terms, looking at, you know, the payoff was going to be 2020. And I think, oh my gosh, that's 30 years from now. Well, time continues. You know, there's no way to stop it. Eventually it's going to come to pass. It's what are you going to do in that between time. So I guess there's no answer because it's different for everybody. But don't try to not be adverse to risk. If something appears that there's a little bit of risk to it, don't rule it out. Analyze it and see if you can get comfortable with it.
So if you have more questions, we are the last ones in this room.
Sure.
Can you stay around for a little
Yeah.
bit? That'd be awesome. So let's thank Dave for coming and sharing these.